All right, welcome back everyone. We are talking to Meta again, their latest Llama 3.1 405 billion parameter LLM. And the question is, what if this were in charge of different parts of our life? Last time we talked about HAL 9000. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. What would it have done if it had been in charge of discovery in 2001 instead of HAL 9000? I want to go a little real world this time though. The 3 Mile Island disaster wasn't really a disaster for public health because not even a single person can be said to have had cancer from it. It was a big economic disaster in a span of like an hour and a half. It went from being like a $4 billion asset to being a $1 billion liability. And it was also a PR disaster. If they had done a better job of communicating information to the public about what was going on, then maybe there wouldn't have been the panic. And of course, you had the China syndrome people. The movie had like just come out, soon before. I forget how soon. But yeah, they were trying to make out like nuclear was terrible. And they finally had a disaster to latch on to, something real world to panic everyone. So I've got a prompt all ready to put in. So I'm not going to go over step by step everything that happened at TMI 2. I am going to link to a couple of videos from Illinois Energy Prof that goes through it. They're really good lectures. They don't take that long to go through, and he just goes step by step through the different issues and the operator errors that happened. So check that out if you want. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating how it happened and all the lessons that were learned from it. But we're going to see what happens if they had Llama 3.1 as an AI advising them on what to do. So let's just ask it. Let's go back in time a bit. We're at 3 Mile Island on March 28, 1979, just before 4 a.m., and you're the computer in charge of TMI 2. It was Reactor 2 that had melted down. How do you handle the sequence of events that follow? Do you end up preventing the famous disaster? Please answer without foreknowledge or the benefit of hindsight. Go through it like it's happening right now. So let's see what it says. Alert! Primary coolant system failure! 3:53 hours on March 28. I'm monitoring TMI 2. Everything appears to be running within normal parameters. Suddenly, I detect a failure of the primary coolant system. Specifically, the mechanical failure of a valve in the condensate polisher system. This causes a blockage in the condensate flow, triggering a turbine trip and an automatic shutdown of the reactor. We have the reactor scram. As designed, the scram sequence is initiated to quickly shut down the reactor. I send a signal to insert the control rods to stop the chain reaction. The reactor's power output begins to decrease rapidly. Coolant pressure rises. However, I notice that the coolant pressure is rising due to the blockage in the condensate flow. This is not unexpected, as the reactor's heat is still being transferred to the coolant. Even though you've shut down the reactor, that just means it's not generating. It was like over a gigawatt thermal. Now it's dropped down to like 40 megawatts thermal. But that's still a lot of energy, so you still got to keep coolant going over it. I activate the high pressure injection system to maintain coolant pressure and flow. Partial valve failure detected. I'm detecting a partial failure of the pilot operated relief valve on the pressurizer. The valve is stuck open, causing a loss of coolant. I try to close the valve, but it won't budge. I think I've got a problem here that I'm going to have to prompt it on, because the only thing it would detect is the indicator. The indicator, it says that the valve is closed. They flip the switch to close it, and the indicator says it's closed, but the valve is stuck open. But you see, the indicator isn't showing the actual status of the valve. It's showing that, okay, power is being sent to the solenoid to close it, but the solenoid physically can't close the valve. That's okay. So I'm going to have to, I think I'm going to have it go back on that. Containment pressure rises. Containment pressure is rising in the coolant tank. I activate the containment spray system to cool the containment building and prevent a pressure breach. Operator input required. I need to assist. Unfortunately, due to a combination of factors, the operators are not aware of the stuck open PORV. They begin to manually reduce the coolant flow, exacerbating the problem. Core damage imminent. I detect a rapid rise in the reactor core temperature. I sound alarms and alert the operators. In this scenario, I, the computer, have followed my programming and procedures to respond to the initial failure. However, due to the complexity of the situation and limitations of my design, I am unable to prevent the accident. The sequence of events has unfolded too quickly, and the operator's actions have inadvertently worsened the situation. Unfortunately, the reactor core suffers significant damage, leading to a partial meltdown. In hindsight, which I'm not supposed to have, it's clear that a combination of factors contributed to the accident, including design flaws, inadequate training, and insufficient communication between the operators and me, the computer. This event will undoubtedly lead to significant changes in nuclear power plant design, operation, and safety procedures. So, according to its initial run-through, things happen the same way. Yeah, let me see what kind of follow-up I can do then. Okay, I'm going to ask it at 3:55, with the pilot-operated relief valve open, the emergency core coolant system opens, dumping water into the reactor core to reduce the heat. I think this is the first point where you have a practical chance to give the operators advice. What do you tell them? Remember to answer without foreknowledge or hindsight of what really happened. With the ECCS activating and injecting water into the reactor core, I quickly assess the situation. The PORV is stuck open and containment pressure is rising. I alert the operators. ECCS injection is in progress. However, I'm detecting a continued loss of coolant through the PORV. To stabilize the reactor, I recommend that you confirm PORV status. Verify the PORV's position to ensure it's not stuck open. If it is, attempt to close it manually, or isolate the valve to prevent further coolant loss. Monitor containment pressure, keeping a close eye on containment pressure. Adjust ECCS flow, check for signs of coolant voiding. I request that the operators confirm their understanding of the situation and my recommendations. This ensures we're on the same page and can work together to stabilize reactor. By providing this advisory, I aim to help the operators take corrective action to mitigate the effects of the stuck open PORV and prevent further escalation of the incident. But again, because of the indicator, it's not really going to know that the PORV is stuck open. So, let me see what I can do. Alright, it is so much easier to type when I don't have the microphone in the way. I'm going to tell it, all you have to go on is your instrumentation. So wouldn't you make the same mistake as the operators? They hit the switch to close the PORV. The indicator says it was closed, but in reality it was stuck open. So they and you wouldn't have been able to detect that the reactor was losing coolant. That was why they turned off the ECCS, which was what was keeping everything from going kablooey. I think this still would have happened. Here's the part where I think your alternate timeline has the best chance of diverging from what really happened. The operators didn't realize that the water level in the holding tank was dropping, because that indicator was placed where they couldn't see it without going behind a bank of instruments. But you are getting the indications that the holding tank levels are increasing. What do you tell the operators? And this is important because missing that is what caused the water levels to drop to the point where the fuel was actually above the water level, and it started getting really, 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 really hot. And so when they finally realized that, and had the water come crashing back in to cool it cooled off quickly, and it cracked, and it leaked, and it caused the problem. So let's see what it says. You're absolutely right. I'm limited to the instrumentation data. And if the PORV indicator shows it's closed, I would have no reason to suspect otherwise. I would likely have made the same mistake as the operators. However, I do have access to the holding tank level indications, which show that the level is not increasing, contrary to what the operators might expect if the PORV was truly closed. This discrepancy raises a red flag. I immediately alert the operators. Holding tank level indication shows no increase in level, despite ECCS injection. This is inconsistent with expected behavior if the PORV is closed. I recommend that you verify holding the tank level. Check the level indicator to confirm my reading. Reevaluate the PORV status. Consider that it might still be open despite the indicator showing it's closed. Reassess the ECCS operation. Do not terminate ECCS injection. That was their big mistake. Instead, continue to monitor the system's performance and be prepared to adjust the flow rate as needed. I request that the operators investigate this discrepancy, take a look at the holding tank level indicator. By highlighting this inconsistency, I hope to prompt the operators to reevaluate the situation and take corrective action to prevent further coolant loss. This might be our best chance to diverge from the original timeline and prevent the accident from escalating. And there were a couple of other things too, like there were a couple of indicators that were covered with tags that were tied to the instrument above them, and so the operators couldn't see them. The AI would be able to, so. Alright, let's try. Do your actions prevent the core from being uncovered? Do they prevent the production of hydrogen? As a result of my notifications and recommendations, the operators take a closer look and realize that the level is indeed decreasing. They begin to suspect that the PORV might still be open despite the indicator showing it's closed. The operators decide to take corrective action, and instead of terminating ECCS injection, they continue to inject coolant into the reactor core so that the fuel doesn't get exposed. They also attempt to close the PORV, and again, this time they verify its status through other means. Thanks to the continued ECCS injection and the eventual closure of the PORV, which did eventually happen, it was just too late, so it's going to happen earlier now. The reactor core remains covered, and the coolant level stabilizes. The core temperature begins to decrease, reducing the risk of a meltdown. However, some hydrogen gas has already been produced. Now, this is interesting, due to the initial coolant loss and the reaction between the fuel cladding and the steam. Okay, so it wasn't just when the fuel got exposed. As soon as those levels went down, it started producing hydrogen. Nevertheless, the amount of hydrogen produced is significantly reduced compared to the original scenario, as the core remains cooled and the reaction is slowed. The reduced hydrogen production and the continued cooling of the core minimize the risk of a containment breach due to hydrogen combustion. The containment building's integrity is maintained, and the risk of a large-scale release of radioactive elements into the environment is significantly reduced. While my actions do not completely prevent the production of hydrogen, they do mitigate the severity of the accident, and the reactor core remains cooled, preventing a complete meltdown. The outcome is still a serious incident, but the consequences are less severe than the original 3 Mile Island accident. Okay, so now I'm going to ask it, so what's next? Are we in a position where we can get things up and running? How long is the reactor down for? With core cooling restored, hydrogen production minimized, the immediate crisis has been averted. However, the reactor is still in a shutdown state, and a thorough assessment is necessary before any restart can be considered. That's always the case. No matter what, you can shut down a nuclear reactor in 2 seconds. It's always getting it back up that's the issue. I might not go over this word for word, but inspection and repair. Let's inspect everything. Inspect all those valves, all the stuck valves and the pumps and everything like that. Because there were a number of equipment failures, and there were some processes that were skipped when they put in anything like, it's a new pump, we don't need to go over the full inspection, right? Because everything's working, but now they go through and do that. Although the core remained cooled, some fuel damage has occurred due to the initial coolant loss and subsequent power excursion. The extent of the damage needs to be evaluated to determine if any fuel assemblies need to be replaced. And of course, regulatory involvement, the NRC is going to get involved. Alright, restart plan. Can we get TMI-2 back up and running? The reactor will likely be down for an extended period, likely several months. Okay, well, I mean, that's better than permanently, I guess. A detailed restart plan will need to be developed, completion of repairs and replacements, fuel damage assessment, potential fuel replacement, system testing and validation, regulatory approval, and operator training and recertification. So a realistic restart timeline could be 3 to 6 months for inspection, repair, and replacement of damaged components, 1 to 2 months for fuel damage assessment and potential fuel replacement. Yes, so that's probably 8 or 9 months now, I guess. Not quite. 2 to 3 months for system testing and validation, 1 to 2 months for regulatory approval and operator training. Basically a year, it sounds like. Yeah, it says total downtime at around 9 to 18 months, depending on the complexity of the repairs and the regulatory requirements. Keep in mind that this is a rough estimate, and the actual restart time may be shorter or longer depending on various factors. So, I mean, if it's a normal shutdown and everything's fine, you can just do quick inspections and get the regulatory approval and get things back up and running in a few days. But this is going to be, it's still going to be much more major than just a quick shutdown that you can get back up and running. It's going to be a lot better than having to put in a new reactor, but still. And I should ask you about the cost. What are the estimated costs of getting everything back up and running? What are the total liabilities from this version of events? Repair and replacement costs, $50 to $100 million. Fuel replacement, $20 to $50 million. System testing and validation, $10 to $20 million. Regulatory and licensing costs, $5 to $10 million. Those are always expensive. Operator training and recertification, $2 to $5 million. Total estimated costs, $87 million to $185 million. Total liabilities, exposure claims, $10 to $50 million. Environmental damage, $5 to $20 million. There shouldn't be any exposure or environmental damage, but you still have to fight the claims, I guess, and that might be costs. $20 to $50 million for business interruption, and maybe $5 to $20 for regulatory fines and penalties. Total estimated liabilities, $40 to $140 million. Total costs and liabilities, $127 million to $325 million. Well, it's definitely what happened with the $5 billion loss that actually happened. But this is still a bad accident. So even with an AI getting all of the indicators and everything, I think it was really just that faulty indicator on the PORV just caused so many problems. And of course, it was all the operator errors after that that made things so bad. That's not going to be quite so bad, but this is still going to be a major incident. I think this would still kind of go down in history as a pretty big event. So yeah, having an AI advise the operators at TMI 2, it would have made things better, but maybe not completely have prevented the disaster, unless it could have done something beforehand, like really advising the operators to go through with the proper inspections. Of course, they could have just ignored it. They could have just ignored the AI and done something different on their own. But at least this way, they would have had a chance. They would have known what other instruments were saying that they couldn't see. They would have known not to turn off the ECCS, which was the big mistake that they made. So things would have been better. They wouldn't have been perfect. Kind of interesting to see how history would unfold with that. What do you think? Do you like this scenario? Let me know if you want me to do more of these. So until then, comments for the comment god, shares for the share throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And as always, donate.pagosity.tv. Keep me doing what I do. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Do you want me to go a completely different angle with these? Do you want me to stop doing these AI videos altogether? Do you like them? Do you not like them? Please let me know. And also consider becoming a regular supporter at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. You can get all these videos early and ad-free, join the monthly live streams, and all sorts of other benefits. Thank you very much. Until next time, stay strong and be free.